I release this microphone to Christine. Oh, here it is. I'll have a short introduction and then I'll explain why we have the order of presentations and the different perspectives. When we were asked to talk about innovations for business e-participation, I was a bit baffled because for me e-participation was more citizen than business. And I looked at some definitions. I decided that the most fitting one would be the one coined by Anne McIntosh, who is not with us here, about citizens attempting to influence the legislative or otherwise decision process of an administration. We want to have impact. We want to persuade. Businesses traditionally had their means and ways of doing just that. But I decided that we can compose this panel of speakers who could look at the business e-participation issue, first of all, from the business perspective. Do we really need e-participation? And I'm a business person, first of all. Then I'm a humble researcher sometimes, but I'm a business person. I don't really feel all that much. I've got enough of administration doing 95% of my revenue from the administration. So Christine will tell us whether it's worthwhile for a business to go and interact. Then we have Jaroslav Deminet, who happens to be a computer scientist, but he works at the Government Legislative Center, the place where they actually produce the most important law outside of the parliament. This is the legislative initiative of the Polish government. So he'll tell us how they look at businesses trying to tell them what law they would like to see enacted in this country. Then we have Eva Talo of the e-Governance Academy. We all look up to Estonia. For many reasons, there were strong ties between Estonia and Poland historically. I won't go into that anymore because I could say a few things too many. And they do have the hands-on experience. I looked through some of the reports and I would be very interested, regardless whether this is a citizen level or a business level, interaction with the government in a novel and I would say spontaneous way is not exactly what public administration like best. So I would like to see what these interactions really produce, and we have Eva for that. Then we have two technological perspectives. We wouldn't, in today's world, we can't live with just one. We have Vincenzo Gianferrari Pini from Italy, who runs a company that does business in supporting large companies, small companies, administration bodies, in creating solutions with the use of Google Cloud and Google Cloud tools. An interesting thing. And the question is that helpful to create a platform, as Jeremy was saying, agile, low cost, trial and error, for services that could be classified as services supporting e-participation. And then we were supposed to have Jan Mulfeit, who is the Europe chairman of Microsoft. He happened to get ill, I understand. We have his slides, so that helps. And we have Michał Jaworski from Microsoft Poland. For all the last 15 years I know him. He's always been important there, but what he does exactly is hard for me to tell, but he seems to work. So that's the panel, and I would like to ask Christine to take the mic.
Thank you, Vito. Thank you for inviting me to the panel. I think I'm going to get up, otherwise I'm not going to see you all here.
Yes, you have to press this.
Okay, thank you. Or I can do that here. Thank you, and thanks, Wojciech, for the organization. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And frankly, to admit, Vito, when you asked me, to join for the panel, I was asking the question, what exactly are you expecting me to talk about when we talk about e-participation for businesses? And I thought, for me, this has been tightly linked to the citizens' debate, e-participation per se. So I was trying to find some kind of way of getting round to put a bit of order even in my own head when we talk about e-participation of businesses, trying to analyze what's going on and trying to look into different legal provisions and looking into different terminology and different activity. Now, we all know that when it comes to top-down consultation, participation activities, with the citizens, governments have not been very successful. I came across an article in Die Zeit, a German newspaper, only in September, where frankly, it was said that the government in Germany had spent a lot of money on e-participation projects for the citizen, but there was very little interest, and actually claims that the government has failed in implementing e-participation through technology, but just wasted taxpayers' money. Now the question is, what are we doing in terms of e-participation for citizens? Now, coming back to the concepts and legal provisions that I was looking at, and also the studies that are available on e-participation, I came across some, in particular also the definitions of some of the European projects. And there you have different categories that are relevant in terms of e-participation projects when you analyze them. It is about category of information provision, about campaigning, consultation, deliberation, discourse, mediation, community building, spatial planning, petitions, and voting, but also other aspects. So that's that applied to the business sector. Now, I thought I'm gonna resort.
Instruction.
Yes?
You take this into your right hand.
Okay, and okay, thank you. I didn't see that. Okay, wonderful. That makes much more. And the left, yeah. So I'm used to using my keyboards. I'm so focused on it. So I thought I'm going to resort to the treaty, the treaty of the European Union, and to look into what Article 11 on democratic decision-making processes says. And it's interesting to see that there is a call for increased consultation and dialogue, but it doesn't talk about participation per se. And it talks about involving representative associations, which includes the business sector. Now the key here is, who are these representative associations, and what criteria do we have to select them, and what kind of mechanisms do we have using technology to enable them to participate not only in service provision but also in policy making. In this regard, it is quite interesting that we have launched a conference cycle to deal exactly with this question: European democracy, European dialogue with civil society, which will be launched in Salzburg next year. And it will be looking in particular into the dialogue with the citizens, but also with other stakeholders, including businesses. And we have initiated a series of workshops in Brussels that are supported by the institutions and other bodies and other stakeholders that deal with these new forms of dialogue, as stipulated in Article 11 of the Lisbon Treaty. Now, when we talk about representative associations in the business sector, we all know the big names, if you will, the formal associations like Business Europe, like Eurochambers, or the European Organization of small and medium-sized enterprises, so SMEs. And we know that in particular, the Economic and Social Council is supposed to bring the input from civil society organizations, including the business sectors, into the formal decision making. We also know that in terms of other institutions, formal institutions of the treaty, that there is a lot of discussion going on and projects going on in terms of consultation processes at the European Parliament level, at the Commission level, etc. So we can definitely enhance the decision-making processes and participation processes through the use of ICTs. And there's, as you have heard, and you will hear probably tomorrow and on Friday, there are more and more pilots and projects going on. Now the question is, when we have this top-down consultation and dialogue, and we have a set of defined institutions, To what extent do we need another system or mechanism? Because we've heard today, this morning in our keynote speak, that technology enables participation, better lawmaking, better decision-making, better services, but we need to also look into the institutional change. Now the question here is, to what extent do we use or better use the existing mechanisms that we have at the European, national, regional and local levels? Or do we want to have new ways of consulting the business sector? And do we then get, if you will, the representative picture across Europe? So I have a feeling if we're looking down into the different levels at the formal consultation and dialogue that we have at the moment in the institutional setup at the European level, we already have a lot of differences in the different national cultural systems. Yeah? I'm just referring, for example, to my own country, where we have a very long tradition of the social partners, which are supposed to involve the businesses and other stakeholders' interest. Now, if we go to the new options that we have heard and that we're discussing the bottom-up e-participation of the business sector would mean that we're not resorting really, maybe, to the existing bodies like the European Economic and Social Committee or any other, associations or formal bodies, but we might, on an ad hoc basis or through new technologies, find different ways of getting industries and, in particular, SMEs' interests into the decision-making processes. The question for me is, for the individual SME, I come from a university, but I'm working a lot with local authorities and local businesses. So the first question that they will put is, what's in for me? Yeah? Number two, I cannot get involved because I don't understand what the issue is about. Yeah? And number three, I don't have the time. Yeah? On a societal level, if you will, the question is about transparency. Yeah? Who is going to be inputting into the policy making? We're back to representative associations, organizations, be it virtual or physical. Yeah? And there we need to set criteria. We know that the European Economic and Social Committee had set up 9 criteria for this representativeness. I don't want to go into detail. I can tell you later on if you're interested, but it will be important to talk about these criteria and to enforce these criteria. We'll have to have a mechanism in place to judge and to assess the input and the participating organizations in that regard. And the overall question is, what is the public value added? Because it's not about one single vested interest that we're looking into. We are looking into the public value or the common good that should be the ultimate outcome. And as I said before, and I would be very interested in hearing about what your opinion is on that, we will need new mechanisms, we will need new devices. Yeah? I'm thinking about one example that was mentioned by, you might know him, the founder of the German Flügel TV, who was the key figure in the discussions on Stuttgart 21. Remember the station area that should have been rebuilt, and there's a big row, and people got involved, and a new mechanism to mediate was installed there, and he founded a web TV that was documenting all the discussions there. So he said, maybe we will, in the future, just have people giving a mandate, or businesses that could go for businesses, given a mandate to somebody else who has more time, has more expertise, and would act on my behalf. But still, that could be done in a social network, that could be done via new technologies. We'll have to define the rules to get the right output and to create the public value we want to have. Thank you very much.
Now we flip to the other side of the coin. We have Dr. Deminet from the Legislative Center. tell us why he doesn't like it at all.
No, that's not true. That's a great idea to appoint a computer scientist to take care of the property of the law that is published. Yes. As we talk about e-something, I start with a definition from Wikipedia, and it's red disappeared. Sorry, some part is red. Democracy is generally defined as a form of government in which all adult citizens have an equal say. All adult citizens have an equal say is red. In the red, decisions that affect their lives, and ideally this includes red, equal and more or less direct participation, and in the proposal, development and passage of legislation into law. It can also encompass social, economic and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination. Now, I would stress three parts of it. Decisions that affect their lives, which means legislation. All adult citizens have an equal say, and it is important that there is this equal say, and traditionally it is expressed as elections, votings, referenda, and so on, and equal and more or less the direct participation. Now, we want to slightly change this participation to e-participation, but what do we want to mean that? And as Christine said, that is valid for both citizens and business or business representatives. Is the present democracy perfect? Well, anybody thinks it is perfect? Probably not, and everybody can say, I can see some way to improve it. Nobody is perfect. Can we improve the communication, citizen to administration, business to administration? Definitely, yes, we can. But should we complement the existing mechanism, or should we replace them completely? I'm asking this question because there is a popular saying that, yes, now we can change it dramatically. We can overthrow the existing ways of building democracy, of democracy itself. We can go into direct democracy as it was in Athens and so on. All computer scientists, IT professionals are extremely conservative. I am also conservative, and so I say rather complement, rather improve, not replace. Be very careful about what computers can bring you. I don't trust computers at all. I saw many strange things they did. Yes, direct democracy or representative democracy. How the legislative process now is implemented in Poland, and I guess it's more or less the same in other countries. Some ministry decides to implement some law. I am saying, but I'm concerned with all the law that is created in the government, in the executive branch. Of course, then there is parliament. We can say nothing about what they do there. But at least the bills that leave government and go to the parliament, or the other regulations that are implemented directly by the government are in our charge. Now the draft is sent using internet now to other ministries, to NGOs, Supreme Court, commerce chambers, other representative bodies. We have now already implemented, I guess, quite good tools and regulations for presenting any drafts to the public. They must be obligatory presented in internet, and there were cases where the fact that the bill, the regulation was not presented in internet properly was the reason for the Constitutional Tribunal to declare it invalid, because it was passed improperly without keeping to the procedure. And everybody can check what are the drafts or any governmental regulations. Then the opinions, so far in a traditional way, are passed to the originator, to the ministry, which can or cannot take it into account. Now, of course, there is a way for e-making also this vast part. That's something my colleague from the Ministry of Economy will tell about in 1 or 2 hours. We are in a process of implementing that. And of course, there are some ideas of making a repository of all comments so that anybody can see what others commented and so on. And that's great, but can we go further and say, let everybody participate and maybe decide in this process? Technically, of course, there's no problem. We can make now tens of referenda every week, and even if some million people will participate, servers will do. But do we want it? It is manageable. Suppose 30,000 people provides us with their opinions. Can we reasonably check them? Of course not. And it will be unfair to the people to say, yes, anybody can write and we will take all your opinions into account. We will not. If we have a week for that or 2 weeks, we will be able to check maybe 100, maybe 200 opinions. So what to do with the others? We can, of course, and we do, take into account opinions of some bodies, NGOs, chambers, trade unions, and so on, but not an average citizen. But, on the other hand, there may be some great opinions. And I think that what is most interesting now, there is this idea of using the social grids or crowdsourcing for improving the law, not by letting anybody to decide or to vote, but rather for people to test the law and making suggestions. If we can have thousands or millions of people spending their time, devoting their time for Wikipedia, for improving Wikipedia, if we can have millions of people looking for foreign civilizations or for DNA or for other scientific tasks, then maybe there will be also people willing to check from time to time in some organized way the drafted law. It is very important to find small holes in law, and it happens. Like there is a regulation and then somebody sees, hey, it doesn't work in some case. It would be great definitely to find some solution for that. Now, of course, I will pass through this. If there is something against the decision, if we ask, do you want to pay higher taxes, the answer will be no. If we ask, do you want to get higher benefits, the answer will be yes. What we do is that. And there is also one last thing that we have to be aware of. It is very nice to say that in Web 2.0 everybody participates, but look, now the majority of YouTube, for instance, films are professionally made things. The same as with blogs, with other portals. They are now overcrowded by professional lobbyists and other people just pretending they are average citizens, which are not. And we have to be aware that when we ask people for participating in the decision-making process, that we also will not open the door for lobbyists and organized groups. So, Internet may definitely further improve the decision-making process, but this process must be very carefully designed and monitored. Thank you very much.
And now we find out what really happens in case of citizens, in case of a leading country like Estonia. And, well, then we see what happens then.
Thank you, Viktor, for these nice words. Actually, I remember in 2000 we were in Poland. There was some European Commission-led big conference, ministerial conference. Also, we weren't members of the European Union, but just aspirants. And then, anyhow, there was a public interest also, and Rzeczpospolita had some kind of thing saying that, okay, budujemy drugą Estonię in terms of the development. But, okay, where is this wonderful thing? So let's start immediately. I had a very easy task. I had to, not to figure out what to do with businesses, but just to talk about a little bit of what has worked. In Estonia, we had the sort of the development looks like that. First, we had in 2001, we started with a portal called Today I Shall Decide, and that portal was created in the Prime Minister's office, and I'll speak about it in a moment, because it grew into this second phase, which we have now sort of using. It's called Osale. It's basically participate, and it's also we have some experience on it. And in the meantime, from this Tom Today I Shall Decide portal, we developed something with help of European Commission, some kind of more general portal, open source, which now is implemented in quite a number of countries. Well, it is successfully implemented, as I understand, in Slovenia, and now the Greeks actually want to improve their life with it, and so we can see maybe what it is. But basically, I'll come back to that. Just on the development scale, what is happening now, we launched last year something else, a new thing, which was called Volis. It's basically the open council concept electronically. So, I mean, everywhere, I guess, in our countries, people can go and see the meeting of the parliament or the meeting of the local council if they so wish, but they hardly do it. So we thought of creating a system whereby this possibility would exist in sort of virtual world at least, and it's not this kind of static watching on screen some kind of presentation in this hall of where people come together, but rather it is different. It is meant to be to give possibility to actually also then express initiatives, take part in this, and so on. So I'll go and talk about these a little bit. First, the TAD Plus, or the TOM as we called it initially, and this, well, one could think of it as, and for businesses it would be good, because the idea started, you know, in the Soviet times, if somebody still remembers from Polish audience, or this, I mean, socialist times, we had this kind of complaint books in the businesses that you could write your complaints that, okay, this whatever was on sale wasn't, or the lady wasn't that polite or whatever. So you could imagine this as an electronic complaint and proposal book. And initially it worked really well. As a concept, it was very simple. I mean, you can propose something and you don't have to worry how they solve this. The main thing you wanted to get was some result. And I think that was one of the big lessons. I'll come to these lessons, but basically it isn't technology. It is process setups that is really important. And also it isn't the other things that came from there. It is if you have this kind of processes started from the top. I mean, the top leadership is really important. But now let me talk a little bit about something else. I mean, in this TID Plus thing, we sort of invited the opinions and somehow ranked these opinions, and these were single opinions going to be then somehow accommodated, assimilated in the work of administration. Now this Participate EE, or I mean in Estonian it's Osale, this is somehow a different concept. The idea is that all these kind of data flows that go from the ministry to the government, from the government back to the ministry, let's say, with some changes, finally to the cabinet, and from the cabinet to parliament, that we open up these data flows to the citizens and also for businesses. So you can come in and not only come in, you can observe this process at any level from the moment it leaves the first ministry. I mean, the initial idea was that you have to give some privacy for the people who conceptualize it, but after that it is an open process. And when and if it is open process, you actually have much more chance to influence the outcome. So that by itself is a very interesting project, works very well. However, what we failed to do, maybe on purpose, I don't know, I'm not representing government here, only about 10% of the draft bills go through this. For us, the task is to get the rest of the 90% of the bills through this system as well, and then we can speak more about it. So. If I just sort of wrap it up, the technology part is really, really little. I tried to draw an iceberg there, but it didn't really work too well, I guess. So the technology is on the top, so 10%. All the rest, there are lots of other things. I mean, it's administrative setup, how it works. It is that you have to use it in multi-channel approach. I mean, if you just think that it is broadcasted in internet and that should be enough, it doesn't work. It has to be on the newspapers at the same time, it has to be on TV, and sort of only then it reinforces itself and you have good results. You have to have, well, one of the clear thing is feedback. I mean, you have to have the feedback mechanism. People have to understand that something follows from their participation. That is sort of, you are creating respect to people. You have to provide things, but you have to have this integration with social networks, etc. And it has to be fashionable somehow. I mean, that's the kind of funny thing. I mean, if it isn't fashionable, if it isn't on, then it doesn't work. So but the basic conclusion sort of is rather simple. It is a delicate environment. When we want to create with the people this kind of participation dialogue, it's not dialogue. I mean, when we want people to participate, then we have to be very careful following these basic rules because it is very easy to break it. We've seen with experience of these initial projects that we started in 2001 that the lifespan or the initial interest is about 3 years. I mean, initially people go there, it is broadcasted, it is talked about, debated, and everybody is very happy. And then, sort of the interest fades away. So just 5 simple ideas: start early, show genuine interest, provide clear and comprehensive materials, use different channels and platforms, and give feedback. And then, well, it works. Thank you very much.
Now, having an iceberg, we have 2 technology persons. One is Vincenzo Gianferrari, who is dealing with Google mainly. He won't be mentioning Google much, I understand.
Hello, everybody. Being Italian, I need to use both my hands, otherwise I can't speak. So I prefer to use it this way. So. Okay, hopefully. I will try to stay in my 10 minutes, although normally I like to speak a lot, so I will try to hurry up. So, as Vitek said, I work in a company that is a startup, completely working in the cloud arena, which is something quite new. We believed in this. And we are mainly offering services around the Google offering. But I'm not going to talk about Google. Google is well known. Its offering is very large, a large-scale offering, the cloud computing. The things I'm going to say, I'm sure that also Microsoft will share those because it's common to them. I will mostly, which is this one, the right hand. My small agenda is, I will say I won't talk about cloud computing, what it is. Everybody knows, almost everybody knows what it is about. But I will stress one point about it. To say how I think that eParticipation can benefit from cloud computing. And why? Because it's a bottom-up process that is going on, something that's already happening. And the technology here can help. And my view is that the things are coming from the bottom, not from the top. Somebody already said it. A lot of people said it already today here, this. Then, talking what can be offered, smart services that can be offered using this kind of technology, smart services in the area of eParticipation, but coming from business interests. So the players are not only the citizen, but also the business, small, big and large, and also the government and central authorities or local authorities. At the end, a few small critical points that I want to stress up. So, cloud computing means different things, but there is one special point. One typical classification is talking about cloud computing, public clouds, private clouds, hybrid clouds, community cloud, and things like that. For me, the important thing, the new revolution that is coming up is the availability of the so-called public clouds. The technology enables companies to adopt this kind of metaphor, the cloud computing internally, but I'm not interested in that. It's just technology. We are used to it happens every time. It's interesting to see what is happening. There are very large offerings. Google is one of them. There are a few others really important. There are many small, but that's not so important in what is happening. So I'm stressing public cloud, and I'm going to talk about public cloud, how because of this technology and the availability of those services can help us in the things we are talking about. So, what are the 2 key points that public cloud can, and cloud technology and public cloud can help? First, cloud technology gives a high automatic scalability. If you run something, you build something, it can almost automatically scale as soon as it has success, as soon as there are many people trying to use it, which is important. It's not, you're not building a small application, then you cannot scale when you need to. The second point is, it's quite easy with public cloud offerings to deploy and it has low management costs. It means that, if you see here, the difference between that's my personal opinion, Web 1.0, the one that we know since more than 15 years, everybody in the world, has enabled consumers and citizens, consumers are also citizens, to passively access information which are published by medium to large organizations. We know that. The static sites or complex and big applications being developed, very costly and so on, by large business organizations, also governments and so on. Then Web 2.0, but what is really Web 2.0? Is the fact that it has enabled, with some technology advances, consumers and citizens to actively provide and exchange information, not only access but also provide, using initiatives started by the still medium to large organizations. The public cloud availability, the fact what is already a fact nowadays, enables consumers, citizens, small, large organizations, local governments, small authorities, large authorities, big governments, to start collaboration initiatives by themselves. So everybody can start something easily. The things that we are going to talk about could, obviously there are more complex and less complex, but could be started by the single citizen. If it has a good idea, it will need funding for other things, but it can start things. Things can start from the bottom. And that's the title of this slide. It's a bottom-up process. So public cloud is democratic. Anyone willing to promote participation can do it easily. It's a fact. Using the providers that give tools and services which are strong enough to do those kinds of things, the large ones. Smart IT companies can invent, if they are able to invent something new, obviously, but then quickly build and offer new smart services in different areas. Some of those areas can be in areas of the e-participation. Small organizations, public and private, and even smart citizens can select and easily deploy and manage them. So a company can have an idea, a small one, can build it, can deploy it itself, or it can sell to somebody else that at low cost can deploy it, etc., etc. Central governments, at this point, central authorities, let's say the larger organizations, the public organizations, at this point, should not try to do everything themselves with large projects, but should try to manage, govern, and they will be stimulated and prodded to offer similar services. At this point, also the small local authorities and administrations. It's a kind of marketplace approach, not a top-down dirigism. This is a matter of fact. This is my opinion, and this is what's happening all around the world at this moment. Now, which smart services? We are used to talk about social networking and things like that, Facebook, etc. This is just one case. It's the new things that are coming are the ability to not just to exchange informally, flat, unstructured information between people, but to do structured collaboration with having different roles for the different people. The things can be more solid and application level, more controlled. It's a richness of user interfaces are coming, not only the browser, but everything, in any case, internet-based, that's all. But you have smartphones, tablets, etc., etc. And big use of geographical information for many purposes and so on. This is possible. That's just the last slide, some examples. There is one which is very, I would say, specific of what we are talking about. President Barack Obama, during his campaign, to collect ideas to answer questions, has set up, using a very simple and nice service, free of charge, from Google, called Google Moderator, gave the ability to everybody to pose questions, to vote the questions, increasing the relevance and the importance of the question, and then Barack Obama started to answer the questions that were considered more interesting. It's something that is still being used, and it was not done with a larger application built by the government or by himself with his money. It was a public service that any one of us could immediately start up to ask our friends where we should go for dinner tonight, if it perhaps there are better systems, and so on. And there are other possibilities, collecting opinions from citizens, having citizens report problems, also with geographical things, and so on. Performing surveys with feedback to respondents, and so on. So, these are some examples that can be done. Many things, but starting from the bottom. I think that there would be a last slide of some critical points that we should be aware of. Obviously, it's needed pervasive fast connectivity for accessing services on the cloud, and it's open the security and privacy concerns. The key point is that governments must rule out central authorities, watch and control, and sort out the existing uncertainty that is around this topic. When you speak with somebody, everybody says this can be done, this cannot be done, but there is not any clear thing going around. I think it's... I'm done. Thank you.
All right. I also need 2 hands to have a speech. Before we start, did you ever think about it, why we are here, why we are discussing e-participation? There are a number of things that we have in mind, not always very conscious. Every one of us has a number of devices. We are always on, always online. We have phones, we have tablets, we have iPads, we have computers. That's number one. Even when I'm looking at from the Polish perspective, when I'm looking at the country which is not the richest one in Europe, not most electronically advanced, the people in the age up to 35, 95% of them, they are using computers at least once a week. So this is number one. We are online. When you are coming to the restaurant, your first question is not about, can you bring me the menu? What is the Wi-Fi? Do you have Wi-Fi? What is the password to Wi-Fi? This is your first question. You want to be on. The second thing, look at yourself now. This is the kind what Eva called fashionable, but it is the broader scale which is called consumerization. We are mixing the way how we are working and what we are doing in our personal free time. So right now here you are looking at your emails and answering your emails, I don't know, private or professional, because it's mixed. You are doing the same when you are in a hotel, when you are waiting for the plane in the airport, when you are at home, in the night, early in the morning, and you are mixing this stuff. The way how you work, the way how you live is different. That's why we are talking about e-participation, because these are the things that are also going and have the impact on our life. And let's think in the way that which is called new normals. The new normal is something, it's a state that today we believe it's normal. A few years ago we didn't believe it's normal. E-participation is one of that. Let's think about the digital divide, or in reverse, e-inclusion. What is the digital divide? This is not that people don't know how to use the electronic gadgets. It's only the real problem is that the things that moved to the internet, they are vanishing from the real life. If you want to buy a car or home, you have to be on the internet. If you are looking for the new job, you have to be on the internet. If you are not, this is your exclusion from the normal life. This is the problem. Not the problem is that I cannot go with ATM machine. Okay, Vincenzo has stolen a part of my of my show. So yeah, thanks. In fact, they're gonna listen for the second time the same story. The cloud is part of that. Yes, we are in the cloud. When you are in the social networks, yes, you are in the cloud. When you are using your email, yes, you are in the cloud. So that's the part of our life, and it's cheap. It's extremely cheap. Sometimes when I'm talking to the businesses, I'm asking who has come with his or her own Ferrari or Porsche or Bentley. And people are saying, no, I'm driving my Ford, I'm driving my Opel. That's because the Porsche and Ferrari are produced by engineers. Don't look at cost. But all the cars that we are using, thanks God, they are in fact created in cost in mind. So that's exactly the same with the cloud. And one more slide that also Vincenzo has on his slides, how we can think about cloud, what's the different type of cloud. So you can use the infrastructure as a service. So cloud is a service. It's a service, it's a service, it's a service. It's around us. This is like the power in the plug in a wall. It's coming from somewhere, nobody knows, maybe from the Facebook center in northern Sweden. But in fact, I don't know. Where are the Amazon servers? I don't know, I don't care. It's all around me. So it could be the infrastructure where the data could be placed. It's the platform when there's some new solutions can be implemented, or software. Many people are not interested in anything else than software. So if you think about the government and what government can do for people and what the type of the service can be brought to the people, think about that. Infrastructure as a service. Think about the public information. Think about the public data. This is the very, very important thing today, that governments decided to have to publish their data. Basing on this data, many people can start building applications. Do you remember, it was today, I think Julia, it was you that mentioned about this timesheet for the buses, okay? No, okay, that people just getting the information, just very raw information, they are starting to building services on top of that. Very often governments don't know what the type of the services it will be. The types could be very, very different. It could be the commercial service. It could be the watchdog. It could be the social service, because we are going for the petitions. We need to go for some feedback. It could be the citizen type of service, fix my street. People who are just making photos of the hole in the street, combining that with the geographical data and sending to the government. Okay, fix my street, there is a hole in my street. So many, many things that could be made up on cloud services. If you look here and you think about the government, look just on the last point. So there is a need for the increased citizen interaction. Of course, there are other reasons why the government should leverage cloud, because of the cost constraints, because of the number of the skilled people, IT administration. Every government across the world has the same problem, that there is not enough people to go with the government IT. So just use it as a service, not built from their own. But increase citizen interaction, involvement into political process, maybe not on the level like Ivar was presenting, very high, let's talk about laws, let's talk about the acts. On the low level, very often we are not agreeing to something, we want to do something different way. That's the kind of the interaction that is happening very often. In Poland, we have made together with the Institute for the Market Economics Research, we have made a report on how to use cloud computing for the small and medium enterprises, something that we discussed today quite often, for the education, for the e-justice system, for the e-health. This is only the beginning how to leverage this paradigm. And an example of that type of the services was something that was made by European Environment Agency. Once again, public data. The raw data that came from the different measurement points, combined with the geographical data here from the Microsoft Bing, and all together was showing what's going on with the weather across Europe. Some application built on Windows Azure. So that's how it could work. Of course, you can choose your own technology. I'm from Microsoft, so I would always ask you and beg you and please to, okay, my time is ending, to use my technology, but you can use any technology, in fact. You can use any type of services because cloud is around you, and cloud is something that all the citizens, all the people will use very, very often today, here in this room, today during the banquet in the evening, and tomorrow during the conference. Thank you very much.
Yes, I was trying to make sure that we have enough time for discussion, so I will conclude keeping within 10 minutes, and I wouldn't be myself if I didn't raise my own issue. As I mentioned at the beginning, I make my company's revenue on administrative back offices. And that has been 15 years, and I've provided back office administrative process support from the Prime Minister's Chancellery to small administration, municipal agencies, whatever. And I have some views on that, if I can get. But first of all, I'll try to conclude. The first question is the business ready and willing, I stress willing, to e-participate? We say maybe. After what we've learned from Christine, maybe that's okay. Maybe e-participation would work for business in some cases. And even though we had reluctance from the legislative side of the government, we might get cases which would be successful. And that, what Eva was telling us, the hands-on experience tells us that this is possible, and obviously with some more culture of interaction, we can use and exploit this new paradigm of democracy, in fact. It's a different democracy. And we have positive examples. Technology is definitely ready. Technology is the easy part. You know, it is expensive. In some countries, it's more expensive. There's more hype. If you do go along with Prince 2, you spend 3 times as much money than if you go with other more agile methodologies. Nevertheless, this is not a major problem. So what is the major problem, in my view, is the eternal administrative back office issue. And that's what really exists. First of all, the question is, what is the proportion of routine work versus knowledge work? And if we want to have efficient and effective government, efficient would probably be routine. We want to have administrative processes that run smoothly, inexpensive, that are measurable, and that we could optimize. This is all routine. We need people inside, but it's all routine. Whereas if we want to have effective government, the one that passes out good planning decisions, that creates good law, that creates satisfaction of the society by good interaction and good explanation, this is knowledge work. And the question is, what did we do over the last 15 years? We did practical work on making administrative processes running. In Poland, we might say we didn't achieve the goal. If I look back at the research in which I am sometimes involved, at least evaluating papers, I see a lot of papers telling us how to build good, efficient, measurable administrative processes with existing workflow technology. That's it. And all this, and I was extremely happy listening to Julie Glidden's presentation, all of this goes obsolete because all of the sudden we have this storm of new phenomena on the other side of the fence that require a completely different reaction or a completely different paradigm for the back office. And what I call it mastering the unpredictable. Whatever happens out there is not predictable within the procedures, methodologies, books and trainings that all our administrative workers, better or worse, are getting. And if we assume that we have to go, we have to realize that reality needs to be confronted with, we are talking about a new paradigm for supporting back office. And as usual, once we have a major problem and we know that what we've built already or what we are in the process of building and which is even worse, selling, so I'm talking about myself, against myself in fact, we already see some other solution on the horizon. And there's a new technology that is rather shyly sort of looking from around the corner, which is called adaptive case management. And adaptive case management is something which is completely different than the present, I don't want to use the word theory because there's not much theory behind e-government, but whatever research and practice is telling us over the last 15 years. First of all, we need to take a completely different approach. We are confronted with an issue, whether it's a business posing a question, whereas there is a professional association making a claim of improvement of some law or whatever else. We have a problem-solving approach that is required here. We need to solve a problem. And in order to solve a problem that is typically confronted by a group of different provisions, of different departments, different professions even, different specializations. So we need to get a team, and we need to do it very quickly. There's no use to talk about interaction if time that passes is unacceptably long. So we quickly have to get the team together. We should have the problem-solving perspective, and we have to look at the knowledge assets that we have at our disposal to provide a new original, and maybe it's not that much original. Maybe if we had a knowledge base, cross-administration knowledge base, crowdsourcing the administrative workers of, say, municipal levels, we might have a lot of things to go on. We also might have Web 2.0 tools to crowdsource some knowledge, as already has been mentioned, but one thing we do not need doing all this, we do not need predefined procedures as they exist today. We need a toolbox that would allow us to organize a quick discussion. We might even have predefined procedures, generating or dynamic workflows. I am on the techie side, luckily. Or maybe not luckily, but that's what I do for the last 46 years, so can't help it much. We need to have a toolbox, and we need to be able to use that toolbox. And that has to be agile. And this is a completely different picture. I have a slide that I wouldn't show of how badly in this country my customers are using painstakingly developed software. They use 30% of the abilities they pay for. And it's not because they're stupid. It's because they don't like transparency, they don't want to leave traces, they don't want to have the guy who wins the election to get all that documentation in good order. There are many good reasons that people do not want to manage documents and procedures sufficiently well. And now we're telling them, this is routine, this is unimportant, this is piping. This is as normal as having cars. And now you need to set up another environment, much more dynamic, in order to cope with what is outside in terms of e-participation. And I'm very pessimistic, to be honest, but I talk for the situation in Poland. But on the other hand, we already work on adaptive case management to dismay of my financial officers. Thank you very much. And now I open the floor for questions and comments. We still have half an hour, almost. So you can go on and on and on for half an hour, and I won't be measuring time anymore. So we've done our job. Jeremy. Yeah, okay. No, you can use that one.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's a lot of interesting things there, but just a quick comment on your last discussion. The way I've seen the direction of movement between the back office and the front office, or the desirable reflection. Sorry?
Slow down. I measure
Sorry.
comprehension level by...
Yeah, try to put what you were saying into a sort of broader context. What the technology can help us do is to downsize the back office, i.e. make it routine, but upsize the front office, i.e. the outreach, the contact with citizens, whether it's face-to-face or by phone or through adaptive case work or whatever, yeah? But that means that's really a front office function, I think, yeah? But anyway, yeah, I mean, it relies on back office mechanisms, but they can be more routine, they can be, ultimately you could have one big computer serviced by a few engineers and everything else, anyway, but my real, so that's I see a sort of desirable direction. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. We get more and more tangled up. But my big question is that no one seemed to mention, unless I was asleep, but I didn't actually fall asleep. The big issues here are security of data protection and trust, right? And especially as data becomes more and more fluid, people are participating. I mean, we have this mismatch about people don't seem to care that they give their data to Facebook, but they do if they give it to government. Okay, I don't understand that at all. I'm the other way around, right? but there is a big issue about that. People don't trust it, whether it's businesses or citizens. So they say. I mean, it varies a lot. But what's going to happen to my opinion? What's going to happen to my data? How do I know it's secure? How do I know it's not going to be misused? Those are huge issues, I think, which need to be unlocked or tackled.
Okay, let me start, but I think that the road...
Say one thing and then... We have a person here, Dr. Wiewiorowski, who is actually responsible for personal data security in this country. And we have fairly severe regulations. Whether we meet all of them, it's a different question. But I think you might even comment if you want to. But...
I believe you touched one of the most critical things when we're talking about the citizens online. This is about privacy. This is about who has the access to my data and for what it is used. There is I don't want to steal the show from Mr. Wiewiorowski, but I believe that these are one of the most critical questions for the next 5-10 years. And also, when Julia in her presentation was talking, that the number one was e-identity as a biggest question that arose in a survey. So this is once again, this is the same. We need the federated identity. We don't want to log in, and we should feel safe. It's not accident. When we were talking about how to use cloud, we were talking about the public data from government, not any other. And the data classification is also, it's not a solution, because the classification depends on situation, unfortunately. Sometimes it could be classified differently depending on context. But I believe that when we are talking about e-participation, let's start with the public information, and then it can go. But from the citizen perspective, very important question about my personal data.
Well, maybe I can just dispute a little bit of what you said, Michael, before, and what also is about the data protection issue. You said that, well, with this cloud environment, I don't really care where this service comes from. And I actually do care, and we have a big debate now in Estonia going on because the Swedish, well, all our banks are sort of Nordic owned, Swedish mostly, and they have now plans that, okay, they consolidate their data centers, taking all this to Sweden. and not leaving anything in Estonia. And now, all of a sudden, our government, and well, not only government, people also woke up and said, oh, wait a minute, but if the external connection between Estonia and Sweden or this electronic exchange breaks down, then we won't be able to see a penny, because nobody's giving out anything. Everything is 98% of it is electronic. So when a service becomes really sort of all electronic, and there are no other alternatives, then we start to care very much where this service comes from. E-participation wise, we don't care at the moment only because it isn't, well, there is this traditional system still in place. Okay?
Can I say?
No, we have another question. Now we give preference to the floor, and we can try to squeeze in. Use your pluck. Yeah.
Wojciech Wywirowski, I'm Data Protection Commissioner in Poland. Just one sentence. The fact that I'm here during this conference and the fact that I will be also taking part in the ministerial conference is a very good example of the fact that we all have in mind that the problems of trust and security are extremely important. Looking at the program of the conference, of the ministerial conference that starts tomorrow, you can find that the trust and security workshop or trust and security panel, which is on the first day, is the one where the European Data Protection Supervisor is taking part in. Mr. Buttarelli, the Deputy EDPS, is taking part in this panel. And there is also Professor De Hert, who is dealing with the problem of the privacy impact assessment. So these things are inside the program of the conference. And I also will have an honor to take part in the panel on the cloud computing on the second day of the conference, when we will be just dealing with the problem that Mr. Talo was talking about, not only as far as personal data protection is concerned, but also as far as confidential and security information are concerned. Because one problem is the personal data protection, and the other problem are dozens of other secrets that you have in your country, including the banking confidentiality, including telecommunication confidentiality, and, well, I don't know, probably even the confidentiality of the confession in the Catholic Church, although it's processed in the other kind of clouds than the ones that we will be talking about. But all these kinds of confidentialities are additional aspects of the trust and security.
Okay, please. We have two questions from the floor. Come on.
This subject of privacy and data protection is very narrow to my job, because what we have been doing in Belgium is to connect all the information different government agencies have so that we don't have to ask citizens and companies over and over again, when are you born, have you been married with, and so on and so on. I'm very worried about the present review of the regulation on privacy in the European Union, because that might become illegal, what we are doing. Because the French and the Germans, to start with, don't want those exchanges. They're very upset about privacy and security and so on, which is a good thing. I don't say we should put everything on the market, no open data on personal data, good. But we should still be able to do e-government, and it's very narrow thing, because my first reaction was to be, we have been in e-government what I call digitizing bureaucracy, while we should be thinking in innovation about how can we attain what the government should attain, and that's not a good running ministry, that's good education, good environment, good mobility, and you don't need a ministry. But that's the technique of 150 years ago. We could regulate, we could inspect, we could sanction, and therefore we needed administrations, judges, and law. And then a lot of things like e-learning, e-mobility, the robot car is much more interesting than, again, a good procedure for driver's licenses. And if we don't do this, we will have the same situation as all the old phonograph companies are out of the market because of MP3, and you can just download your music, these things. But the privacy, don't go too strict, or we can just stop with e-government and have everybody fill out forms like they used to do for the last 2,000 years.
Okay, thank you very much. That was more of a comment than a question. Sure. Could you please come up, and then we have the next one.
Hi everyone, Piotr Marczuk. I'm from Microsoft. and I will try to be slightly a bit more controversial. This is the question to Mr. Deminet. Actually, in last slide of your presentation, I saw a strange comment, maybe additional comment. I happen to be also a deputy. I am the deputy president of one of the business associations in IT world, and you mentioned that in this e-participation area, there is no space for lobbyists. You can say all the business groups are also some kind of lobbyists. They want to be involved in all the processes with regards to creation of a legislation, and I think they are also citizens. Therefore, I think that they have the same right to be included, let's say, in all these e-participation schemes and systems in the future, same way as all of the other citizens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you'd like to answer briefly, please, because we have another question forthcoming.
Okay, sorry, maybe I was misunderstood. It's just the opposite. I think that there is a place for lobbyists. They should clearly and explicitly formulate their proposals, and internet and the entire process should be oriented in such a way that it is easy to do this for that. What I was saying about was the, let's say, hidden lobbying. Like, there is nothing wrong with advertisement. What is wrong is if on Facebook there is a group of average people discussing about soap, and it so appeared that 90% of them claims that one particular kind of soap is better than the other, and then it appears that those 90% of users are either avatars or there are just employees of a company. And that is something that happens now in Facebook and other places. There is nothing wrong with a company presenting their product in internet, but if on YouTube you have a significant percent of video clips presented by such companies without giving explicitly the source, that is a problem. It would be a problem if we say, okay, let's discuss if we want road here. Okay. That's it.
I'm sorry to be...
I hope I answered. Sorry.
Well, there's a question from the outset. The floor has preemptive preference. If it won't be...
Yeah, I'll be very brief. David Broster, Joint Research Centre of the European Commission in Seville. Just to let you know that tomorrow in the session on the future of government, I'll be speaking and touching on some of the issues on data protection and privacy. But the main point of standing up is to tell you that earlier this year, we conducted what we believe is the largest survey of European attitudes conducted so far with DG Justice and DG Information Society, and we're just now at the point of publishing these results. But being as it was a fully representative sample, you can also scale it up in terms of European attitudes. So if anybody wants to get access directly to the data, because the data is online and public and can be analyzed, then please see me. Thank you.
Any other comment, question? I have to warn you, because I let Mr. Deminet continue if there's no question from the floor. Okay.
Okay, maybe I can then give one sort of alternative possibility to think about the e-business participation also. Over the last, 30, 40 years, there has been a great effort to create this kind of shareholder society. I mean, it's not just that we have to participate in political life, but we would sort of participate in economic life by owning shares, either directly or through pension funds, etc. Now, one thing that in political life is a great participation tool that works really marvelously in Estonia is called internet voting. I mean, we have the strong identification with this EID cards, and we can cast our votes over internet in parliamentary elections as well as European and local elections. Now, can you imagine what would happen? And maybe we could create sort of alternative to this Occupy Wall Street actually movement if we would use this kind of voting system in shareholders' meeting. Now it is the big banks and the investment companies, pension funds who direct where they want to go with our money, our shares. So it is kind of like parliaments without this kind of participation actually of the shareholders. So the same way as in political life, the e-voting or internet voting works, maybe it could work by democratizing the economic life also. What do you think? Thank you.
Can I just say, regarding the security in general, that is the main theme that comes out. In fact, in my slide, I said this is the most important open question. I would say just one thing. People tend to confuse, people and also legislators, I feel that, confuse confidentiality with data integrity and reliability. There are really three things which are quite different. And many times there are certain things that don't do that or do this way, but for one reason, and instead it's not clear that we are trying to protect one aspect or the other. Secondly, there is a tendency, I've seen, at least in Italy, sometimes, to put the rules that should tell me, let's say me like as a citizen, as a business, as a company, how that I should and how I should protect other data that I own, that I have, I'm managing. But at a certain point, things seems to be telling me how and why I should protect my own data. On my data, I should be free to decide if I want to protect from the point of view of confidentiality, if I want to keep them secret, or I'm not stupid enough to put my credit card information and passwords in public internet, but I could put the kitchen recipes of my wife. That's my choice. I can understand what I do. Or also protecting for integrity, backup of my own data. I can decide if it's worth to protect and how much and how could be the loss. I found, looking at some legislations, at least I repeat in Italy, that those things are somehow confusing. They end up giving me rules as I would be a baby, a child. I think that people are more literate and people using internet and those things are more aware of what's going on.
Okay. Very important issue that was raised here. It was what Ivar was talking about, the Estonia and the voting system, and before how anonymous we can be in the internet in the future. Because on one hand, we want to be known that we are the valid person to raise the hand and say, okay, I'm against something. On the other hand, and not be treated like we are avatars. On the other hand, we are thinking about any other situation that goes against us. So it depends if we are thinking about the northern London, when the people are using the technology in some way, or we are thinking about the Tahrir Plus in Egypt, in Cairo. Because in the first moment we think, okay, it was against the order. In the second, these people were right that they stay anonymous for that moment. Very important and valid question for the coming years, and I think for the next 5-6 years we have to come to a solution, this or that.
There's the question here, great. Yes, I just wanted to make a comment, which is good I didn't.
Will it be good? I'm working here at this university, doing some research on social networks. And I don't know if everybody knows this quite famous experiment which has been done by Watts, which tried to figure out what is the real achievement of crowdsourcing compared with other techniques to make a decision. So I compare making decision using a crowd of people, making decision using statistical models, and making decision using experts. And the result was quite surprising. The worse for the experts, and the crowdsourcing plus the statistical models achieve very similar results. Now, if we put this into the context of today's discussion, does it really make sense to put so much focus on crowdsourcing? Maybe we should not only limit us to crowdsourcing and try to integrate things like automatic decision systems to support the people, instead of just letting the social network make the decision. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, being the eldest here, I want to say that I would be very concerned about automatic whispering machines. We had this for quite a few years, since 1945 until 1989, and they used to support the machines with some other devices, but this kind of limiting discourse by limiting vocabulary and other socio-technical activities were well planned and professionally executed, so I would be concerned. Whereas we didn't highlight crowdsourcing as such an important source of solutions, but it is, appealing to the open world helps us to understand whether we are going to actually apply the wisdom we've managed to obtain or not. It allows us to understand more about the other side, because there always will be an inherent two-sided situation until we completely amalgamate and have our processes, toolboxes, and whatever go across the fence. But I don't believe that you can change the anima of a bureaucrat. So there's another voice from the floor, and then... Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Deminet, I guess I steal the voice. I'm sorry, but I cannot stand making one comment. Mr. Jaworski has said that there is an important discussion which we have to make about the anonymity in the net. And I'd like to generally protest against the idea that something new happens and we have to discuss about the new problem of the anonymity in the internet. Actually, the situation does not differ too much from the real world, and identification of each and every user of internet is purely against the right of the human being, and it should not be even considered. There are some situations in which the person should be identified, like it is in the real world. If you are making a contract, you usually have to identify the user, but there are a lot of situations where you don't need it. There are only very certain cases where you have to identify. And the same is with the internet. Mr. Deminet was saying about the discussion about the law process, about the process of creating the law. And that I agree totally. Once you want to have an impact on the law which is to be created, then you should identify yourself. But when you want to express your political thinking, you can do it anonymously, because that's the base of the democracy, that's the base of the social thinking. I was very afraid of hearing one of the Polish politicians who just a few days ago in the radio said, after the demonstration we had in Warsaw on 11th of November with some clashes among the people, he said that of course you should have the right to express your political view, but why do it anonymously? And my answer is, because it should be anonymous. That is the right of the person. So there is no need to discuss about the general problem of the identification of the person in the internet. there are only certain situations in which this identification is necessary. And that's, for example, the thing which Mr. Deminet was talking about. But let's not try to start the discussion about the change of the internet in order to create the fully unanonymous place in the world.
Yeah, I would like to answer. I would like to comment on this issue of whether or not crowdsource and so on. We have to distinguish between the question, the issue of knowledge, wisdom, facts, and the issue of interests and political decisions. And we should use any tools possible to let people to inform the government, local governments about facts, about knowledge using their own wisdom. What I mean, if there is an error, or as an IT person, I'm not saying about errors, I'm saying about problems. If there is a problem about the law, that two particular bills are contradictory, or that there is a case when something happens, or that implementing this law implies extra costs on producers, which is an area for lobbies, then it is perfectly good if they inform as soon as possible the lawmakers, the rulers, and so on. They are just saying, this will be a problem, right? Think about it. But then there is a problem if everybody knows that if we raise taxes, it will be good for some and not good for others. And then there is no tool other than just representative democracy to make a decision. And of course we cannot try to use Facebook or any other tool to make decision. Who is in favor of raising taxes, then press yellow button or green button. Who is against, press the red button. This is not the way. Wisdom is not democratic. We should try to get as much wisdom as possible from everybody, and we should try to improve our communication and leave the decision making for representative bodies. That was my main. That was what I wanted to say. I know Christine wanted to say something.
Okay, we managed to keep the floor for a minute.
I just wanted to sort of support what you've been saying, and in that regard, I think transparency, when we talk about e-participation of businesses and SMEs, but businesses in general, I think one of the key issues is transparency. As we've seen in the, let's say, offline sort of world, at the European level, we had members of parliament who had to resign because of transparency and combining the office of lobbyism with their task or with their work in the parliament. So in this whole discussion, I think I fully agree with you that we need to have representative organizations, associations, but in the first place, we need to have, if things will be changing, that is for sure, this is a fact, transparency is one of the key issues when it comes to participation also of enterprises and of businesses.
Well, thank you very much. Now the floor. Is anyone who would like to make... Jeremy, obviously, yes, sorry, I forgot. No, you're the only one so far.
I'm getting fired up now, that's the problem. I've agreed with everything Mr. Deminet has said, except when he said wisdom is not democratic. I think I disagree with that, because wisdom is not a thing, it's a process. And democracy is a process. Wisdom, you can't actually say it's true or not, but I mean, okay, this is semantic to some extent, but I think it's a mistake to say that. And the other guy, I think there are some situations where it is actually very dangerous to give your opinion and be anonymous. And it was illustrated before, because if you're giving your opinion about this soap is wonderful, and you are not transparent, as Christine said, about who you are, you may not have to give your name, but we should demand, and I don't know how it can be done ultimately, we should demand transparency about what is the position, who are you representing, why are you making this statement. We need to know those sorts of things, otherwise we just never trust the statements that are being made. We don't need names, but we do need the form of transparency it can allow us to know that these people putting forward this view, they come from a certain company or represent the oil industry or whatever they do. We need to somehow, I don't have the answers to that, but this is so critical for our democracy, that people are actually representing, they're not representing hidden agendas, in other words. Agendas need to be open in some way. Now how we do that, I don't know. Using IT tools takes us somewhere down that road. But so anonymity as a default position, I think, is dangerous, actually. Anyway, we'll discuss that.
Yes, is there any other comment or question? Well, I would like to say thank you to you for your patience. We've been standing between yourselves and the lunch, which is quite an achievement. Thank you very much to the panelists who've prepared themselves well. I think we had a good topic to discuss. Thank you very much and have a good lunch. Oh, don't forget to turn in your earphones, please.